Resources Committee to order. We will begin with item number 2, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 3, public comment. The individuals that we had signed up are for the public hearings, so we do not have any general public comment today. We'll move on to item number 4, approval of the June 27, 2023 committee minutes. They were in your packets. Motion to approve would be in order. Motion by Drabeck, second by Unger to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Move on to 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings, review possible actions and possible recommendations to the county board for its considerations. We have county zoning changes. I'd request that everybody please mute your electronics at this time. The Marathon County ERC is now meeting in public hearing on the location plan specifications on the following 6 projects. We have 5A, 1, Chris Fieri on behalf of Jerome and Christine Bloom, Robert and Kelly Bloom, and James Bloom Trust, Farmland Preservation and General Agriculture, Town of Marathon. 2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Tim Brubaker, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Frankfort. 3, Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Philip and Delane Carlson, Rural Residential and General Agriculture to Rural Estate and General Agriculture, Town of McMillan. 4, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Backcountry Manor, General Agriculture to Low Density Residential and Low Density Residential to General Agriculture, Town of Spencer. 5, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Selma Meisner, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Wien. And 6, Town of Knowlton for text amendment changes to General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17. Members of the ERC present today, myself, Supervisor Longenheim, we have Supervisor Drabeck, Supervisor Vensky, Rodney Roskoff, our FSA representative, Supervisor Unger, Supervisor Ritter, and Marilyn Ben, our Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association representative. We also have staff present. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, so must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questions to the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements and on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards of the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are recommendations to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1, Chris Fieri on behalf of Jerome and Christine Bloom, Robert and Kelly Bloom, and James Bloom Trust, Farmland Preservation to General Agriculture, Town of Marathon. And we will begin with our staff report, provided by Garrett. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Proceed with the staff report, please.
All right, this is for Jerome and Christine Bloom, Robert and Kelly Bloom, and the Bloom Family Trust. Petition to rezone land, staff report August 1st, 2023 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Chris Fieri, located at 5310 Willow Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. The property owners are Jerome and Christine Bloom at 225456 County Road B, Marathon, Wisconsin. Robert and Kelly Bloom at 225310 County Road B, Marathon, Wisconsin. And the Bloom Family Trust located at 225401 County Road B, Marathon, Wisconsin, 54448. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road B on the west side of the road and just south of the village limits of Marathon City. The petition of Chris Fieri on behalf of Jerome and Christine Bloom, Robert and Kelly Bloom, and James Bloom Family Trust to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from FP Farmland Preservation to GA General Agriculture as described as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 3438, recorded in Volume 13, Certified Survey Maps on page 33, and Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 7619, recorded in Volume 29 of Certified Survey Maps on page 82, and part of the east half of the north half of the fractional northwest quarter of Section 18, Township 28 North, Range 6 East, Town of Marathon. Area proposed to be rezoned to general agriculture is described as Lot 1 and Lot 2 of preliminary CSM, parent parcel numbers as displayed. Public hearings meeting. I do have the Town of Marathon's resolution. We did get that here this morning. They met on July 31st, and the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, August 1st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Okay. So in the staff report, we have to be determined for the town recommendation. Like I said, we did get the town resolution from the town this morning, and they did on July 31st. They recommended approval to the Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation: the rezone meets all the zoning standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Okay, any questions for Garrett? All right, thank you, Garrett. All right, we'll proceed to public testimony. I would ask that anybody in favor of the request, please unmute yourself if you're joining over WebEx or approach the microphone to the back of the room at this time. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone request 5A1, please unmute yourself over WebEx or approach the microphone at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Last and final call. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. I'll call once for anybody wishing to speak as interested for 5A1. Please identify yourself at this time. All right. Seeing as that there is no one else wishing to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing on matter 5A1 closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Motion to approve would be in order, I believe. Supervisor Ritter?
I would make a motion to approve the petition of Chris Fieri on behalf of Jerome and Christine Bloom, Robert and Kelly Bloom, James Bloom Trust to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from farmland preservation to general agriculture in the town of Marathon due to both staff and town recommendations.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Vensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. On to 5A2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Tim Brubaker, General Ag to Rural Residential, Town of Frankfort. We're back to Garrett.
All right, so this is for Timothy Brubaker, petition to rezone land, staff report August 1st, 2023, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. The property owner is Timothy Brubaker, located at 107012 Huckleberry Road, Colby, Wisconsin, 54421. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road N at the intersection of County Road N and Hazelnut Road. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Tim Brubaker to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to urban residential. Location described as part of the southeast quarter of Section 18, Township 28 North, Range 3 East, Town of Frankfort. Area to be rezoned is described as Lot 1 of preliminary CSM, parent parcel number as listed. The Town of Frankfort Town Board met on July 19, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, August 1st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice that a zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 19, 2023, the Town of Frankfort Town Board recommended approval to the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation: the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff should recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change. Just one quick note, when we went through and on the staff report, the public hearing notice refers to urban residential. I believe it is public hearing notice correctly that went out. It should be rural residential, and the resolution that was presented and sent back by the Town of Frankfort is also for rural residential. The typo was my error. When this initially came through, it was found the Town of Frankfort did not approve it because it was underneath their minimum lot size of 2 acres when it was initially done, and I looked over that when I went to correct this. So we also have Tim Vreeland online, the surveyor, if there's any questions for him.
Sure. And I see on the notice for today's meeting it was real residential as well. So, yeah. Okay. Any questions for Garrett? All right. Thanks, Garrett. Moving on. We'll move on to 5A2. We will move into public testimony for 5A2. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone request, please unmute yourself at this time or approach the microphone at the back of the room at this time. I'll call again. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone request, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none, I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to the proposed rezone request, 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, I'll call once. For 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing for 5A2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Tim Brubaker, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Frankfort, now closed. The committee will now enter into the deliberation phase. That sounds like a broken record, but also seems approval will be in order. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of, and if I can read this right here, of Tim Brubaker and from general agriculture to rural residential based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, also that the town board approved it.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Rodney Roskoff. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to 5A3, Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Philip and Delane Carlson, rural residential and general agriculture to rural estate and general agriculture, Town of McMillan. Back to Garrett.
All right, this is for Philip and Delane Carlson and Scott and Arla Carlson. Petition to rezone land, staff report, August 1st, 2023, the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Christopher Schumacher, located at 235619 North 108th Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54401. Property owners are Philip and Delane Carlson, 109-787 Chase Road, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. Scott and Arla Carlson, located at 206-933 Abe Lincoln Ave, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on Chase Road and Abe Lincoln Ave near the intersection of those two roads. The petition of Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Philip and Delane Carlson to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from rural residential and general agriculture to rural estate and general agriculture, as described as all of the north half of the southwest fractional quarter of Section 17, Township 26 North, Range 3 East, Town of McMillan. Areas to be rezoned to rural estate are described as Lot 1 and Lot 3, and areas to be rezoned to general agriculture are described as Lot 2 and Lot 4 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel numbers as listed. The Town of Gunther Town Board met on July 10th, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, August 1st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 10th, 2023, the Town of McMillan, it should be Town of McMillan met, not Town of Gunther. Town of McMillan Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Thank you, Garrett. So just to be clear, this should be Town of McMillan, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That's good, because that's what's on the notice. Okay. All right, any questions for Garrett? Nope. All right. Thanks, Garrett. All right. We'll proceed to public testimony. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone 5A3, please either unmute yourself on WebEx or approach the microphone in the back of the room at this time. I think I do have a Chris Schumacher here. You mind coming to the microphone, Chris? I think you were with us last month. Yeah. Can I swear you in just real quick? So, the name and address. I think it's name and address. What? Yes?
I believe his name and address.
Okay. Name and address.
Chris Schumacher, 235619 North 108th Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54401.
Thank you. Then I'll swear you in. So please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. So first thing, do you have any testimony you wish to offer?
Not other than it's cleaning up some parcels that were already existing, so
Got it.
it actually makes it better.
Yep. Any questions from the committee? More importantly, because I see you noted that if there are any questions that you'd make yourself available. So any questions? Nope. All right. Thank you, Chris. All right. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone request, please identify yourself at this time for 5A3. Seeing and hearing none, I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak against the proposed rezone request 5A3, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none, anybody wishing to speak as interested for 5A3, I'll call once. Please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as there is no one else wishing to testify for item 5A3, I'm now declaring the public hearing for Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Philip and Delane Carlson, rural residential and general agriculture, to rural estate and general agriculture, Town of McMillan, now closed. The committee will now enter into deliberation. What is the pleasure of the committee? Supervisor Ritter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make a motion to approve the petition of Christopher Schumacher on behalf of Philip and Delane Carlson to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from rural residential and general agriculture to rural estate and general agriculture in the town of McMillan due to staff and town recommendations, finding of fact, and conclusions of law.
There's a first, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Couple more. 584, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Backcountry Manor, General Agriculture to Low-Density Residential, and Low-Density Residential to General Agriculture, Town of Spencer. Staff report, please.
All right, this is for Backcountry Manor, petition to rezone land, staff report. Should be August 1st, 2023, Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owner is Backcountry Manor at 104995 Backcountry Road, Spencer, Wisconsin, 54479. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on Backcountry Road just east of the intersection of Backcountry Road and County Road F. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Backcountry Manor to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to low-density residential and low-density residential to general agriculture, as described as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map, number 138986185, Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map, number 14531641168, and that part of the northeast quarter and of the northwest quarter of Section 15, Township 26 North, Range 2 East, Town of Spencer. The area proposed to be rezoned to low-density residential is described as Lot 1, and the area proposed to be rezoned to general agriculture is described as Outlot 1. Parent parcel number listed there. The Town of Spencer Town Board met July 11th, 2023. Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, August 1st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 11, 2023, the Town of Spencer Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan, and as indicated by the town's resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Can you go up a couple pages, Garrett, please? Actually, hold on. Go one more. Forward. Sorry, forward. Yeah. Yeah, there. I'm not asking you necessarily your opinion, but isn't that an oddly shaped piece right there?
Yeah, we'd call that a flag lot.
Why is that?
A lot of times it can be because there's a building there and they're trying to survey it out and get it to another owner, and they have to provide some sort of access via either easement, which we would recommend being 66 feet wide, or they create this flag lot to basically accomplish the same thing without having to do an easement. The actual driveway then is in that parcel's ownership.
Sure. It just looks weird because if there are any parcel changes that would take place up there, you would have that little sliver with the flag staff.
Right.
Is that a common practice? Oh, yeah. Chad, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
So just to add a little background information, a lot of the times, a lot of these were historically made, and they were only required to have a 33-foot easement. We do, if a flag lot is to be created today, we do have them do the 66-foot, essentially that a 66-foot path, so the flag pole part of that flag lot would be 66 feet. We do have the authority in our code to reduce it to 33 if that is not possible. But it is relatively common. We see these somewhat often in Marathon County. A lot of the times people like to own the access to their property versus having an easement, and this is one method of doing that.
Okay. All right. Any questions for staff? All right. Thank you both. All right. Public testimony. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call once more after this. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call once more. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none, I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as there is no one else wishing to testify for this application, I am now declaring the public hearing for 5A4. Tim Vreeland on behalf of Backcountry Manor, General Agriculture to Low-Density Residential, and Low-Density Residential to General Agriculture, Town of Spencer is now closed. Committee will now enter into deliberation. While that does look weird, I get what Garrett is saying or Garrett and Chad are saying, that it would make sense that for the purposes of the landowner that they would want to see that all as one piece. So I still think a motion to approve would be in order here. Supervisor Ritter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make the motion to approve the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Backcountry Manor to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 7 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to low-density residential and low-density residential to general agriculture in the town of Spencer due to town and staff approval, finding of fact, and conclusions of law.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Vensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, 5A5. Tim Vreeland on behalf of Selma Meisner, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Wien. Last one.
All right, Selma Meisner, petition to rezone land, staff report August 1st, 2023, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owner is Selma Meisner at 221281 County Road M, Edgar, Wisconsin, 54426. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on County Road M, just north of the intersection of Blackberry Road and County Road M. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Selma Meisner to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to rural estate, described as part of the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter located in Section 27, Township 28 North, Range 4 East, Town of Wien. The area proposed to be rezoned is identified as Lot 3 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel number as listed. The Town of Wien Town Board met on July 13, 2023. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, August 1st, 2023 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wasadale Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 13th, 2023, the Town of Wien Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation: the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
All right, any questions for Garrett? All right, thank you, Garrett. All right, to reiterate, we are on 5A5. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the request, I'll call once. Please identify yourself at this time. Okay, for 5A5, I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to the rezone request, please identify yourself at this time. And finally, I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for the proposed rezone request for 5A5, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing as how no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing for Tim Vreeland on behalf of Selma Meisner, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Wien, 5A5, now closed. The committee will now enter into deliberations. Supervisor Wensky.
I make a motion to approve Tim Vreeland on behalf of Selma Meisner to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County from general agriculture to rural estate on behalf of recommendation of staff.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Rodney Roskoff. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right.
You didn't say it, they did.
Oh, can you check the staff report? I think Supervisor Drabeck just pointed out it's, I think Gunther gets mentioned again.
Yeah, it was a typo on my part. It is
Okay.
Town of Wayne.
Sounds good. All right, number 6, Town of Knowlton for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17. We were briefed on this last month. Chad, do you have a report to give before we get started, I'm guessing? Yep. Okay, go ahead.
There we go. Just real short, some of this is going to be just kind of what we discussed last week too, but I did want to give you some updates on some input we've gotten from the towns. Again, Town of Knowlton is petitioning to change essentially our livestock ordinance as it pertains to chickens on certain residential districts. So we'll kind of just, I have it laid out here essentially to show the changes. The minimum lot size would go down to 0.5 acres, so a half an acre lot size. It currently is 2 acres. It would now allow for chickens to be in the UR district, urban residential districts, which it was not originally. But since if this were to go through and that half acre would be allowed, urban residential is allowed to go that small with their lot sizes. So it would be, and it was proposed in their resolution. We did reach out to the towns of Marathon County zoning to get their input. We received responses back from Rib Falls, McMillan, and Frankfurt. They were all for the change. They decided, we have their draft minutes, and they all opted to support the resolution. We did hear back from Elderon, and their draft minutes, they decided to go against the ordinance. It didn't state in their draft minutes, but through conversations with the chair, they just thought that the half acre was too small of a lot size. That's why they decided to not support the ordinance change.
That concludes your report.
Yep, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So I got a couple of questions. I guess I'll start with my question about Elderon. So did Elderon give any indication as far as what would be acceptable, or were they just open to keeping it the same instead of reducing it to the half acre?
They did not provide an alternative. They were just more interested in keeping it the same.
Okay. And they are one of our county's own towns, correct?
Correct.
Okay. My next question is, as far as the definition of chicken and fowl, does that include a rooster?
This would actually, the language would essentially stay the same in the sense where 12 chickens and fowls, hen only. So roosters would not be permitted, and especially in those smaller areas. So
Is that
just
on that page? Where is that?
Yep. So I'll zoom in here quick. So In the rural residential district, minimum lot size for housing chickens would be a half acre.
Oh, okay, I see it in the blue.
Yep.
On the bottom. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any questions for Chad? Supervisor Drabeck?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Say, what about like ducks and stuff?
So this would be all fowl. So you would be able to.
Chair Gibbs?
Just, excuse me, just a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peacocks too?
I believe the peacock, and I'd have to double check here, but I don't believe the peacock, I think it was excluding peacocks.
Oh, I hate to do this, but I have a question because I've actually seen it happen, but ostrich? I've seen it, like,
I don't believe we have anything on the ostrich.
that wouldn't be included in the definition, or
I'm unaware if they
Okay.
would be considered poultry or not.
where would you? No,
Or fowl,
I'm just
sorry.
curious because,
There is nothing right in here regarding an ostrich, though, no.
okay.
I don't believe that language is even included in our current ordinance.
Okay.
Looks like the deputy administrator has something to add.
Oh, Mr. Holman, please.
As an avid raiser of poultry in my other life, I was curious, it seems like if the motivation for some of this or excluding roosters was noise, you might also want to consider guinea fowl, because even females are quite boisterous.
Is it possible to, I guess this would be a question for Corp Council, is it possible to add a definition? Or can we go below whatever we already have here?
Mike is on, I do believe you, but he is on. Hang on just a second.
I am on.
Can you
Mr.
define
Chair.
a chicken, please?
I wish I could. I think what Shad was mentioning is the definition of, well, the definitions in here are chickens and fowl. I was just looking to see if they were further defined somewhere else, but I don't see that they are.
Would it be, I mean, as Corp Council, is it recommended that we would include a definition of fowl then to not include those other terms, or what do you think, Mike?
Well, I think the fact that we're having this discussion suggests to me that there could be some confusion or ambiguity with the language as it's currently written.
Okay.
So I don't think that a further definition, just outlining exactly what the committee's intent is, would hurt at all. I think it would probably help with the understanding of what actually this is intended to regulate.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Marilyn?
Could you just strike the word fowl and just have chickens?
What's the, I guess, to build off of that, the advantage, of course, of including fowl in there is that you could have things like ducks if you really wanted to keep them, correct? Geese, yep. So, I wonder if we shouldn't just hold these discussions maybe for the general discussion at the end and collect the comments from the public, and then we can circle back to this. And maybe Mike could have some more guidance to provide in the meantime. We can give him a chance to research. So, anything else, Chad, or?
Nope, and not unless you have any other questions.
Okay, we might after the public testimony. So, okay, we will move on to public testimony. And I do not believe I have to swear people in for this, but I do believe I have to ask for name and municipality, I think it is, yeah. Okay. All right, and I do have two individuals signed up for this one. I have first Bill Larson. You want to come up to the mic? And then, I don't need to swear you in, but if you just state your name and then your municipality. It doesn't have to be the full address.
William Larson, and I live in Knowlton Township.
Got it. So, yeah, whatever you like to provide, please feel free to go ahead.
I find it's interesting that I moved from town to the county, out in the woods, basically, and I didn't know this, but I wasn't allowed to have chickens. And Garrett came and brought a little bit of surprise to me when he showed up at the house and say, "Did you know?" And I said, "No, I had no idea." So I reached out to the township chairman and proceeded to show interest in being able to be allowed to have chickens, since I already had them anyway. We want to do things right, and we want to be responsible. I believe quail would be considered a fowl, and there's a lot of people interested in having quail. They're a lot easier to manage than chickens, and they don't make the noise of a rooster that a rooster would. But I find it awkward that you can now have chickens downtown Wausau, up to, I believe, 5 on a city lot that's only 50 feet wide. And if I put houses on my property, which is almost 200 by 200, I could get probably 8 houses on it if it was in the city, which would let me have 40 chickens. Not saying I want to do that. I have 9 right now, and there are plenty enough of busyness going on with chickens. And no, I'm not interested in roosters. They are nothing but trouble. They attack the other chickens. They make an awful lot of noise. And I live out in the country because I like the peace and quiet. Do you have any questions for me?
I was just going to ask, as far as it sounds like then the intent as far as bringing this to the county is just purely through that chicken lens. Then you had mentioned maybe quail or something like that.
Right.
So like, I guess the thing I want to drive home at is that if the county decides to define that term fowl, there would be no objection to that?
No, none at all. None at all.
Okay.
And my reasoning for having chickens is, and this may sound odd, but I have Old English Bulldogs, purebreds, and they do really well on egg for feed. And my dogs are very highly allergic to processed food, and otherwise buying eggs is very expensive. Feeding chickens isn't much cheaper, but it's a lot more fun. And I get a way to feed my dogs, which is a lot cheaper than buying processed food.
Can we do something about that, please? If we can, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Ribbick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a system with chickens that they can put them in a pen, and they move that pen around because they're called grass-fed chickens, where they have it like on wheels. But this seems like it needs a permanent fence, and that would not have a permanent fence. You could keep moving it around your yard. Is there any place for that here?
So before we get to that, I think just because we're collecting public testimony right now, why don't we save that for? Perfect. Okay.
I can shed some light on that. That's called a chicken tractor, and it is a permanent fence. It just keeps it really low to the bottom of or closer to the property, to the ground. And it is on wheels, and they can be rather large. I've seen them 5, 6 feet wide, 12 feet long. So you're not wrecking one spot of your grass. I have a permanent enclosure with a roof on it, plus fenced in, and bricks around the outside, so I can't let any rodents get into the chickens. It keeps them very well protected. If I known about chicken tractors, I probably would have opted that and then just wheeled it up to my chicken coop at night so that they could get back in, because we have a lot of predators. There was a mink farm next to my house at one time before I moved in. There's a lot of eagles, there's hawks, there's owls. We have coyotes barking in the backyard constantly, and we've had bear up on my porch.
All right. Any other questions for Bill? All right, seeing here none, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we have Brian Feit. If you would please approach the microphone at this time. And then just please say your name and then municipality.
Brian Feit, Knowlton Town Chairman. We're the people, our board is actually the one that requested this. What our thoughts were that if a city can have it, a rural town should be able to do it. And I know Bill has them, and when you walk around our town or travel around our town, you probably could get rich on the fines because it's already being done constantly, and just nobody's turned the people in. I mean, because you live out in the country, people believe that they should be able to have chickens, and we're looking to regulate it. Now, we just used the standard terminology that the county zoning had already with the fowl. We really didn't think of the other things. And the reason we went down to a half-acre lot is we do have half-acre lots. In our town, we started out with half-acre, actually probably less than half-acre, probably in the 60s, and eventually grew up to 2-acre lots now. But we felt that we wanted to cover the people with the older lots just because they own a home with a smaller lot, that we didn't want to punish them. And I don't, we took a couple of meetings to discuss this, and we forwarded it. We actually had a graduated number of chickens for the lot size, but a couple of the guys on the town board have farms, so they're not illegal as far as their chickens go, and said that if you only have 2 or 3 chickens, you're not producing enough eggs to even have breakfast. So we bumped it up to the standard amount.
All right, any questions for Brian here? All right, thank you. All right, so I think you got the question answered about the tractors, correct?
Yeah, partially, but there's some of them where I've seen where there's some systems out there where the coop actually moves along with, so they don't have to put them away at night. They're just there. It's where they go, wherever they go.
Sure.
So I just.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay. I guess I have another couple things to note here. I have a little bit of a concern with Elderon that they didn't offer a reason for that 2 feet, but to be honest with you, after listening to the discussion today for the public hearing, I'm inclined to support the half-acre. On top of that, I heard from another town that is not under county zoning last week that they were interested in getting into county zoning, but their concerns were the allowance of chickens. So this might actually produce some flexibility for us to maybe get more towns under county zoning if they see that the code is amenable to the people that they represent. So those are a couple of thoughts that I had. I am the what takes place between this group here and when it gets up to the board. Can we add in a definition in the meantime?
So we can definitely add or adjust definitions. I still think it's probably a good idea to send that language out to the towns to make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page. One thought I did have, since defining fowl might impact other areas of our code, like the agricultural sections, not necessarily just the residential districts, but if we added a definition for just residential fowl, that way it can be 2 distinctions between what would be allowable residential fowl versus what would be allowed on your 40-acre farm or your general agricultural farm pres properties. That might be an alternative as well.
Okay. All right. So then this wouldn't go in front of the board this month then? Are you thinking about maybe having it for September, or what do you think, Shad?
I don't think it'd be able to go in front of the board this month. I think it would have to likely come back to this committee once we get the definition language. Make sure you guys are okay with it, get feedback from the town. And then once we get that, it would go to the county board.
Can you do that in a month, or?
I think we should be able to have it ready for next meeting. I think that should be fair. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Sorry.
No,
I just wanted to get some clarity on what exactly we wanted to address as far as definitions. What, do you want us to define foul in general, the residential foul? I guess, would it be just bringing forth a couple of options? I mean, I guess a little bit of direction as far as what we want to define.
I don't think overcomplicated. I mean, you could have residential foul and then just have it apply to this section and then include quail, I think was mentioned, ducks, geese, turkeys. That's fine. Yep, turkeys. There's a couple of them right off the bat. And if there's something out of bounds, we of course will let you know next month.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page as far as what we were defining, so.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, so apologies to the town of Knowlton. We couldn't act on this today, but we want to clean that language up. And then, like I said, just for the sake of discussion, I of course support the half acre. I do. So, yeah.
Hang
All
on.
right. Okay.
Hang on, I'm just clarifying. Do we need a motion to postpone then? Or,
yeah,
I guess.
well.
I don't know if we do, or, okay, Mike's saying send it back to the towns with that guidance, okay.
Well, I think we could just direct staff to
Yeah.
continue to revise the language and reach back out to towns.
Okay.
So what did Mike say? Is there a motion required or no?
Mike, do we need a motion?
I think if the committee's direction is to have staff send this back to towns with a definition of residential fowl, including what was referenced today, I think that could be done by motion or just, I guess, direction of the committee, depending on what your preference is.
Okay. How about, well, I don't think Mike's going to be happy with me. If anybody's objecting to the direction being that we provide direction to staff to take that back to towns to provide a definition and engage with towns, just say no right now. Didn't see a no. Okay, direction's been provided. And we'll stop here for item number 5A6. Okay. Thank you to the gentlemen, members of the audience that came for the hearing today. Appreciate it.
Much.
All right. Done with 5A6. We will move on to the rest of the agenda here. We will go to 5B, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration, town zoning changes pursuant to Wisconsin statute 60.62 sub 3. Town of Ringgold, town zoning ordinance section 10.03 sub 2 sub A and 10.04 sub 2 sub A. What do we got for this one?
Yeah, this is just a non-county zone town ordinance update. Town of Ringgold, and I'll bring the packet up here. They did provide the information that it was noticed. Let's see. The petition and then the meeting minutes are included as well. And the notice that it was noticed. Now, this is again one of those items that, for lack of a better term, it's kind of a formality to come through the board, so.
Okay. All right, all the town approved it. Motion approved, be in order. Not all at once now, folks. You raised your hand for half a second there.
I did, yeah. I was just trying to.
Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, sir. I was just trying to remember which town I was working at here. But, yeah, make a motion to approve the rezone petition from Ringgold.
Yep. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Vensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. On to Town of Wausau. I'm not reading all that. B2, please.
All right, this is a rezone from Wausau, and they're going from, let me bring that up here. Oops. Not working for me here. Sorry about that. Only my screen is, there we go. All right, so it's a rezone going from, where are we at? R1 to commercial/light manufacturing district, along with a conditional use to permit to allow for fabrication, packing, packaging, and assembly of products. This was also, they did provide the notice as well as the resolution from the town.
Okay. Thank you, Shad. Motion approved be in order. Supervisor Ritter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to approve the rezone for the town of Wausau.
Motion was made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabeck. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right. C, moving right along. Review and possible recommendations, County Board for its consideration. 1, amendments to Chapter 19 of Marathon County General Code. This was referred back to Park Commission. This is referred back to Park Commission. Now it's back in front of us here today.
So we have
Lori?
Andy Sims from
Oh,
Parks, and I think
Andy.
Jamie Polly is on the WebEx as well, but please refer to the printed handout as that has the updated, and I think Andy's going to give you a little bit more, and then this is the updated one in the window as well right now, so.
Sounds good. Andy, whenever.
You bet. Thank you. So yes, this committee saw this, I think, last month and went back to Park Commission with some language changes that were suggested, which are incorporated in the revised paper packet that you have. So I guess really here to field any questions on that, and there is actually one error in that packet that you have, which is under 6B definitions under archery hunting. I think when we revised this, we maybe cut and pasted too much on one part. So it just strike the picnic areas, campgrounds, beaches, and buildings portion right after that that statement of archery hunting.
So to be clear, you're on page 8.
I am on page 8. Yes. I have to toggle between these here. Let's see.
I think that's where the section starts.
Yes, so I think it is on page, it is on page 9 under B definitions, the definition of archery hunting. There's a definition provided, the act of pursuing near taking wild game animals using a bow and arrow. Bows include crossbows, and then it continues picnic areas, campgrounds, beaches, and buildings, which is not a very cohesive sentence.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, yeah, my apologies. I'll apologize for Jamie. She's in Indiana right now, and I don't know if she did this on her phone or how she did this today, but she made that change.
So did Park Commission meet today?
They did, yes.
Okay. And I'm guessing this was approved unanimously?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I want to say, and committee members, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there are a couple of things that we were focused on last month. I think tree stands was one of them. And then I think I just had some concerns about safety. So I guess I'm just going to take a second to review tree stands here quickly. But if there's any other questions, please feel free to go ahead.
Chair Longenhan, this
Go
is
ahead.
Jamie.
Yep, go ahead, Director Polly.
The only thing that's changed from what you were sent this afternoon, from what you were sent in the original packet, was actually besides the error Andy just found, which is good. I'm not sure how that got in there, but was under on number 2, the safety things in the packet. We didn't have the extra 100-yard one from the center of the road. So what you have in front of you printed should have the correct number of items for safety, which is the 100 yards from the picnic area, campgrounds, beaches, buildings, designated, or in buildings, and then 100 feet from designated trails in the center of the road. And then in there also, we have the elevated platform of 6 feet, which we defined based on the input last month. And then the hunting hours, and then the tree stand definition and trail camera definitions are taken, or regulations are taken right out of our county forest, chapter 16.
Okay.
Adapted slightly for the parks.
Sure, it's great that it's consistent. What was I don't know if I might be completely lost here, in which case, please forgive me, committee members. But that first part, as far as the 100 feet back, where is that in here?
It should be under
That's on page
6A2.
Yep, the bottom of
Page 8,
Oh,
yeah.
where I started, okay.
No.
And the park commission was still supportive of this being for the entire park?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason the 100 feet from designated trail was changed is if that was to be maintained at 100 yards, it would really pretty much negate the ability for a hunt in that park with the trail system.
Say that again?
The original language was 100 yards from every established trail. If that was the case, there would be very limited areas to hunt due to the nature of the trail system in there.
Okay. So I guess as far as just general comments here, I mean, if Park Commission supports it, and we had some individuals last month that supported as well from the public, or I had heard mention of members of the public supporting it, I'm okay with it, with the understanding that there will be a adequate amount of signage out there warning people of this change, and there will be public outreach leading up to the hunting season, press releases and that type of thing, to let the members of the public know that this is a change. That's what gives me a lot of high anxiety.
Yep, and we're on the same page there, which is why we're doing this as early as we are, so we can get that public outreach done. In addition to that, we would like to, obviously it can only be voluntary, but we would like to collect information on number of animals harvested. So we will have a voluntary kiosk station for hunters to report that harvest, so we can track what we're doing and where we're at. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Questions, comments from committee? Okay. What is the pleasure of the group here? We can send this on to the board. Supervisor Draybeck?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion by Draybeck, second by Vensky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are on to C2, establish Dells of Eau Claire Park boundary based on recent survey and complete land exchange.
Yep, so this one was here last month too, I believe. I apologize, I was not. So there are 4 options that are possible here for this. So the reason for this is Mr. Tim Mickey is in the process of conducting a logging operation and recognized that the property boundaries that were previously established are not correct. So the county surveyor went out to survey that area and recognized that there are basically a sliver of his property crosses one of our vault toilets in the group campground, and then there's another section of property that we believe to be county property, which is. So we're looking at 4 different options. I apologize. So either number 1 would be adjust the property boundary to the new survey and remove the vault toilet, which would entail replacement of the vault toilet in a different location, approximate cost $60,000. Option 2, a quitclaim deed to basically land swap 0.547 acres of county land to Mr. Mickey, and the county would receive 0.084 acres, which would leave the privy on county property. Number 3 option would be the county to purchase that .084 acres from Mr. Mickey. And option 4 would be to request a 5 to 10 year easement for that parcel until it was time to replace the privy or vault toilet, as I've been calling it. Our recommendation to Park Commission was option number 2 with the quitclaim deed, and Mr. Mickey is in agreement with that recommendation. He is here today. He came in a little bit later, so I'm not sure if he's interested in speaking or has anything to add.
By all means. Okay. You just want to approach the microphone, that's the only thing.
Oh, okay. Thank you to this committee for our consideration. It was quite a surprise going out there, finding out that land boundaries are not as accurate as you think. And as I told my wife, I said, well, if we own part of the pit toilet, I hope we get a key for it. So, and it was interesting, the pit toilet was put in 1996 and no one figured out that there was any property difference. The fence line, I believe, has been there at least since the 1930s, because the 40 that the county now owns was an original part of the land we own to the north. We own an 80 up to the Eau Claire River. That 40 was a part of our 80, and that was since 1880s when it was purchased by the U.S. government. So when I talked to Tom Loveland, he was really nice. He said, go ahead, figure out what's going on there. And then I looked at the county maps, and some say the county maps online are good, some say they're bad, or they're not as accurate, I should say. But I really found out that I really had a lot of questions. And so again, I did the approaching to the county in good faith. And over the years, we've owned our property, 30 years worth, by the way. We've done everything with the assumption that that was the property. So we would like to make this clean. It's really a no-cost thing. I've put in all the labor to clean it up, and the county surveyors have come in to do what's been found out as being different, and just feel that the historical 80, 90-year difference is the appropriate route for ourselves and to our neighbors to the south, which happens to be Marathon County. And I'm here to answer any questions if anybody has them. We're on a corrected township. We're on a corrected 40 as well. That's not a true 40. We're on the west end, so it's actually 44 acres because all the extra land or the reduction of land occurs on the north and the west side of a township. So we're in the township of Plover, right up against the town of Easton.
Any questions for Mr. Mickey? Supervisor Drabek?
I'm understanding, right, that the option 2 is what you guys would prefer? Is that?
Yeah, well, we consulted with, it's running up the ladder. I understand that. And everyone that we've talked to, whether it was Tom or Jamie Polly or whatever, we've all from the get-go felt that option 2, based on the historical nature of the fence lines, the original, there's one original blank no trespassing sign to the county, what we assumed, and no one has really wavered. I understand the county wishes to look at other options and so forth, but as the recommendation from those that work for the county and ourselves, I'm very appreciative that we very clearly, very quickly looked at option 2 as being in the best interest of the county and the best interest of my wife and I.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Mickey. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. This one in front of Park Commission.
Yes, this morning.
They supported number 2, right?
They did, correct.
Okay. Oh, I'm in favor of supporting number 2 with the quitclaim deed. So, Supervisor Vinsky?
I'll make a motion to go with number 2, option 2.
Okay. Is there a second? Supervisor Unger with the second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to C3, approving funding for Ice Arena architectural study.
Okay, last one for me. So, yep. So we submitted an RFP and to 4 different companies to do a preliminary study of what would be needed for a new ice arena, and one returned a bid to us for $32,500. We can fund $10,500 of that internally with our department, $5,000 from the Wausau Youth Hockey, and most likely $5,000 from the Wausau School District. So our ask is to forward the request of $12,000 of this project to the Human Resources, Finance, and Property Committee.
All right, I apologize. My pen quit and Supervisor Drabek was lending me another one. Okay, so what was the total cost of this?
$32,500.
$32,500. So $10,500 comes from the department?
Correct.
$5,000 comes from the
Youth Hockey.
Youth Hockey. $5,000 comes from the school district?
School District, yep.
So you're short 10?
12.
12. 12. So the ask is to take this to finance for, or where would the $12,000 come from then?
We're requesting the money from the county, so I believe it has to go to the Property and Finance Committee.
Okay. And then finance would figure out where that $12,000 would come from?
That is my understanding. Jamie, if you're still on, do you have any info?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the request in the memo is to take the $12,000 from ARPA allocations. However, I have been in contact with Administrator Leonard, and there is a potential that he would look at this from his administrative budget as a study. So it will either be ARPA or administrative funding that's available.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead. Yep.
Where is this proposed ice arena going to be located?
There is not a location determined for the ice arena at this time. The study is preliminary to the point to determine what size it would need to be, what the cost would be. The study would involve the user groups as well as department personnel and county personnel to determine basically what's needed. Once we know what's needed, then we would look to where it would be.
Well, if I could add, it is part of the West Side Master Plan. So the idea of the West Side Master Plan is a new arena would go where the Highway Department is. There is the potential also, if the Highway Department doesn't move in a timely manner, that it could go where the cold storage building was, which is now a green space. But that will be part of the study to determine whether or not that property is adequately sized for what is ultimately needed.
What did Park Commission do with this?
They approved this and passed it along.
Okay.
This is identified in the West Side Master Plan as a next step because we do have to determine what the needs are. And then what will come out of this is a concept plan and an anticipated cost estimate. From there, it will be determined, how it's funded. It's definitely going to be public-private partnership, but we need to know a number first and what the actual needs are of the community. This is identified in that.
Or if it's funded.
Right.
Supervisor Drabek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm having a bit of a time with this with the Highway Department that's not moving anytime soon, and it sounds like they want to push this right away. Okay, and also we got like North Central Healthcare and stuff like that we're still paying on, and there's a lot of outgo there. Myself, I'd prefer not to let the county go into more debt, and this would be just it, kind of providing that, so they could go into more debt. To get more, doing the study, then they could. That's just another step in the process. So.
Well, I think here I'm gonna air out the room a little bit here, and I'm not afraid to do so. I think that there's some apprehension about, if you do this study, how does this commit the group towards more investment into that facility? And I've heard in the past that doing a study isn't the same as committing funding to a project. I totally understand that. Although I do share a little bit of Supervisor Drabek's concern that if we aren't in a situation where the highway facility would be moved, anytime soon. And in addition to that, when that would happen, how long would it take for a study to be done in order to address that particular piece? Because as far as what you would do with the existing facility, as far as the funding itself, I mean, it is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of a county budget, especially when the money's already been budgeted for. But it does give the impression, at the very least, that the county continues going down this road and making investments into those facilities. And I think it's no secret here to this group that I have even a little bit of a apprehension of the county being in the ice making business. So, Chair Gibbs, or, we got multiple hands here. Most activity I've seen this afternoon. Everybody just calm down. All right, Deputy Holman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, from my point of view, the study would accomplish two things. And in terms of commitment, it definitely does not commit the county to anything, but having that study in place is something that you can adjust. There are construction indexes out there. So if you completed the study, say, this year, you can look at regional calculations and say, let's just say hypothetically in 5 years we were looking at doing this. You can apply calculations based on the national trends in construction costs and get that budget number sort of for building the budget for something based on that calculation and the information you get from a study like this. The other side of it is that in the conversations I've been in, most of them have revolved around the need for external, AKA non-county funding, to be a large part of this. And so what a study allows you to do is to actually say, here's what it could be, and here's what the budget number would look like if it were ever to come to be. And then that allows you to help build the fundraising platform and the network so that if you went out to the community, to foundations and companies and others, that you'd have actual information in hand to explain to them what you're trying to do should the committee and board move in that direction at some point with other entities in the community, similar to the Green Heck Project and others in the community we've seen with similar types of revenue streams for getting them going. So I think in terms of how valid the study would be over time, I think you can extend that validity through those construction indexes I was referencing. But also, if there is any intent to explore this and to even see what partnerships in the community would be, it would be really important to be able to come to them with something that's more tangible versus an idea that's intangible with no real idea about what would it look like, the question about where would it be, and the costs associated with it. And so, knowing that it doesn't commit, I do think that if there's a general interest in looking at what it could be, this would get you closer to the point of, embarking upon that path without actually taking a step that pushes you into a place where you're not comfortable with it.
Chair Gibbs?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I was going to, reiterate some of the same points that Deputy Administrator pointed out. I think what it does is it provides you a potential number that you now can say, okay, maybe the county is willing to put in nothing, and it provides an opportunity to have a discussion for the stakeholders, the other stakeholders, that this is what it would cost, and if you're going to raise money, that's what it's going to take to be able to produce the facility. Now, that being said, it also at least allows the conceptual understanding that it's either 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. I don't know the number, nor does anybody here know the number without the study, because we don't know what the size, what the groups are going to be, who the groups are that are going to utilize it, and what their needs are.
And that's fair, and I think that as far as the facility being currently offered, if the county wants to keep going down that road, there needs to be more discussions as far as what those community partnerships look like, because not every single person in my district goes to use that ice arena. I'm sure there's some that do, but not every single one of them. So is that fair for all the taxpayers to be paying for that? How about this, just as a thought for this group, as far as a compromise to get a number, do that study. I think I could support this if I knew this was coming from ARPA funding. I'm just going to throw that out there. What are the thoughts of the rest of the group? Now, I guess my question would be to Mike Pernier, can a motion be made from this group with a contingency as far as, if Mike's still on with us, by the way, that $10,000 be from ARPA funding?
I think this committee could recommend approval to the board with that funding stream identified.
Sure. And I guess I'm just going to say this right now with the recording on YouTube and everything. I'm not going to support this if it doesn't have that ARPA funding. So it's up to the group. If somebody would like to make a motion to approve that contingent on that $12,000 coming from ARPA, I could support that. Or if not, the study doesn't get done anyway and we'll continue forward. So it's up to this group. And I don't intend on being here until 6 o'clock tonight, so. Supervisor Ritter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make the motion to approve the funding contingent on it comes from ARPA.
And when we say it, we mean that remaining 12,000.
The remaining 12,000 that, yeah, wasn't covered under the other group's funding.
Okay. Motion's made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all is in favor. Oh,
Sorry.
Supervisor Drabek.
Yeah, there was something about $20,000 back that they would not charge us for. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. In the event, and I'll find the language in here, in the event they are selected as the group to provide the professional services for future construction and planning, then they would credit us $20,000 on off that first invoice. So that's
Thank
great.
you. How long is that good for?
Well, in their in their estimate, it doesn't provide a time frame, so I can't answer that.
I was going to remember that when he sees the invoice. If he sees the invoice, I should say.
Yeah, we would hang on to this document forever, I believe.
Yes, it's good as long as we are planning to do this, if we go with that firm to do it. I have worked with this firm before, and it is something that they do, that they provide the service.
Marilyn?
Can you give the name of the firm?
It's in the packet. It's JLG. Their proposal is in your packet.
It's page 140.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Did they give an amount about what it would cost to have the architecture thing done? You know, to do the whole thing?
No, they did not, because this proposal is to gather the information in order to get to that next step to answer your question.
Yeah. All right. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. Motion carries. It is not unanimous. Moving on to item number, what do we got here? 5D, review and possible action. 1, Turbot Estates final plat, Town of Mosinee.
That would be me. So I do have a staff report for Turbot Estates, the final plat. It's in the town of Mosinee. It's included in your packet. It is almost identical to the preliminary plat staff report, so I won't go over all of it. I just will note that this committee did approve the preliminary plat on May 30th, and since then there have been no changes to the final plat, so it does reflect exactly what the preliminary plat did. Based on that information, CPZ staff recommend that ERC approve the proposed final plat of Turbot Estates. Any questions?
I do not have any. Any questions from the group? All right. Motion to approve be in order?
I make a motion.
To approve?
To approve, yes.
All right. Supervisor Vensky with the motion. Is there a second? Supervisor Drabek with the second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right. We are on to D2, corrections and updates to the 2022 scheduled deposits regarding CPZ citation amounts.
There? Okay. Thank you, Chair Longenhan. We are just bringing back before the ERC, the schedule of deposits was updated in March of 2022, but recently we were looking through it and just noticed a couple of mostly clerical errors or things that were left out, and a couple code corrections. So in particular, for 1102-3D, it was meant to be in the update that went through in March of 2022. But it was left off the list, so we just wanted to get that added back in there, as it is in our code as a prohibited activity for the direct runoff of animal waste from an animal lot into waters of the state or a direct conduit to groundwater. And in doing so, that was the initial reason we picked up the scheduled deposit and went through it. In doing so, we noticed a couple other references that needed to be corrected. And in looking at 1102-3B 1 through 5, we just wanted to clear up that language, just to make it clear that it was any one of the following that would qualify as a violation where a fee could be put on the landowner. And there was some confusion as to the statement at the end, not brought into compliance, if that could be misunderstood by landowners. So it was suggested that be struck from the language, because that is not written in the code like that. My understanding with that particular ordinance violation is Corporation Council at the time, just because there's so many listed in 1102-3B, they just had suggested we just list it as one compiled item, but we're just putting any one of the following just so it's clear. It could be any of those things in that list. A couple other code
Can
reference.
we stay on that page? Thank you. So that blue language makes sense to me with 1102-3D. So the proposal here is striking out, well, it's adding the blue under it and then striking out not brought into compliance.
Yeah, it was just, it's not written in the code as not brought into compliance, so it was just clearing that up, that there was, staff felt that landowners might misunderstand that or take a lot of liberty in terms of what that meant. So, yeah.
Okay. You go on to the next page, please.
So for chapter 15, there was a code reference correction for the that we needed to make. It wasn't 1516 paren 6, it's 1510 paren 6, so we just corrected that. For the zoning code, we wanted to make sure that the construction, alteration, relocation, reconstruction within the shoreland area or the shoreland wetland without a permit, so that was just a language correction. And then there was discussion about the grading, earth disturbance, and/or fill within the shoreline area without a permit. Right now, that fine is $100. We talked that if we had a range that we could use, that would just help us in terms of individual situations, giving us the liberty. Like if somebody is really working with us, we can keep it on the low end. If we need to take it up to that $500 limit because we're having trouble getting someone to come into compliance or even sit down with us, then we would have that discretion with that particular violation. And then a correction for Chapter 18 and the code reference as well. Those are the end of the proposed changes.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Just going back to that first page with that not brought into compliance, but that would not stop from staff working with that landowner through stepped enforcement.
Correct. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, the fines are the last thing we go to anyways. We do go through the stepped enforcement process, and
Okay.
the fine is the last sort of thing we put out there if they won't sit down with us or if they're not making progress towards compliance.
Sure, I can understand staff's concern, but if that's actually, if something like this is codified in there, that can create issues with enforcement. So I can support that as long as that stepped enforcement, which is in place, or is in place, which I have no reason to believe it wouldn't be. So I can support that. Okay. Questions, comments? Not? Oh, Supervisor Drayback.
Sorry, is there anything on here about like runoff from bunker silos or anything? I didn't see anything on there, but I might be missing it. Which one?
defined under the storage facility? We'll have to double check, but we believe it, we have to look at our definition of storage facility. So I think it is covered in there though, but I can look it up, so.
Is it possible that was covered in another fee too, or?
Hold on just a second, we're
Yep.
pulling it up. Here, I can.
Yeah, like it could be addressed in another area depending on the definition. Yeah.
I'll be quiet now.
No, no.
It's exciting.
So you're referring to, could you repeat what you were referring to? It was bunker silo?
Thank you. Yeah, I was talking about bunker silos, the runoff from bunker silos and stuff, that it's a lot of water that can run off those, so.
Yeah, I'm not
I didn't know
sure.
if the, up from the bottom, the fourth one up, if that would have anything if that would cover that.
Processed water and or leachate leaving the property.
Wastewater.
It would, yeah, the leachate one would likely cover that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes,
Yep,
we
yes.
believe that covers it, yes. Yep. Okay. Yes, it covers it. We just checked with staff.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, seeing, hearing none. What is the pleasure of the group?
I'll make a motion for the schedule of deposits ERC for corrections and additions proposed today, 8/1/2023.
Motion by Supervisor Unger. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to, all right. 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. A, department updates, CPZ, Park Rec, Forestry, Solid Waste. We have none. 7, policy issues discussion and potential committee determination. A, committee discussion regarding 2024 annual budget and policy recommendations from the committee. 1, mandatory versus non-mandated fees. 2, use of fees and rates. 3, understanding department's use of levy. Looks like we have a presentation for today.
Well, it's not, I'm going to say it's not a presentation necessarily. I believe at the last ERC, the ask was to learn a little bit more about the priority-based budgeting process that was previously done by the county in 2019 and what criteria went into some of that. So we were asked for all 3 departments to go back and provide what we had related to our scorecards and quartiles, which can be very different by department depending on what we were able to get from the contractor before that project was completed. And I believe the ERC also asked for a little bit more definition on what went into making those scorecards and quartiles. So I will give my basic overview of it. I know there's some other staff on the line and possibly in the room who were also present at the time who can offer some additional information. We were able to find the completed scorecards for both solid waste and conservation planning and zoning. The parks did not have there wasn't a complete scorecard, it just had the community attributes. So my understanding as it relates to the scorecard exercise that was done was there were two sort of bigger areas that were considered. One was the basic program attributes, that's what this slide up on the screen explains, that looked at mandated to provide a program, reliance on the county to provide the program, change in demand for the program, cost recovery of the program, and portion of the community served by the program. So in each of those instances, departments would look at their programs and their functions and provide a score based on what that applied to that particular program or function. For example, in the mandated to provide a program was given the number 4 if it was required by federal or state legislation, 3 if it was charter or incorporation, and so on down. I think one of the things to note is the mandated versus non-mandated spreadsheet that the administrator put together earlier this year that has been in your packet every time. That came from definitely the mandated versus mandated exercises that were done in the priority-based budgeting. So it's my understanding that was one of the most helpful things that did come out of the priority-based budgeting was understanding mandated versus non-mandated. So he did put that together earlier this year and share that with you as well, and it is in this packet again. As it relates to the community side of the attributes, my understanding is the county did develop the community attributes. So the program-based, I believe, came more from the contractor. The community-based came more from the county itself in terms of what defined us as the safest, most prosperous, and healthiest county. And the scores related to that would be 4 for essential to the result, going all the way down to 0 for no influence on the result. So from that, scorecard was completed for each of the departments across the county. I know from talking to employees that were here, I believe everyone started with very long lists of functions, like 60, 75 tasks or functions, and as they worked with the contractor more, that was rolled up into the higher program areas, realizing that perhaps we were splitting too much and we needed to, in order to accurately capture what we were doing, we needed to group things together more. So when I went through our scorecard for CPZ, for example, the program area was originally how the scores were applied, but then we went back through on the left column and added what those ended up getting rolled up into in the bigger mandated versus non-mandated spreadsheet, the bigger program areas. The other thing that did come out of the priority-based budgeting then was the placement of the programs into quartiles, and with 1 being the highest priority and 4 being the lowest priority. So I believe Parks and Conservation Planning and Zoning were both able to locate those quartile exercises.
So then just to be clear, sorry to interrupt, but just to be clear, this is from 2018?
2019, 2020 is, I believe, when it was done.
All right, thank you.
So, and in this case, so quartile 1 indicates higher importance, whereas the scorecards 4, I would say, typically coordinated with higher importance or higher mandate, things like that. So, so I think that's where we are in the sense that we were able to locate these things. We can talk a little bit more about it. I think every department, well, I think both Parks and CPZ definitely think there are things that have changed in our department in the sense, for example, real property listing was not a function of our department when we did this, so it's not even included in anything you're seeing. We talked internally too that we're not entirely sure how the final quartile placement all took place in terms of how they ended up getting there, because when you look at the scorecard, it doesn't always necessarily match, but where it ended up in quartiles, but we don't have all those things to give us that story. So. And then I'll let Jamie and Dave from Solid Waste and Parks add any additional thoughts at this point. So, is Jamie still on?
Yeah, Laura, you did a good job. Thank you for taking that. I guess the only thing I would add from mine is the one sheet that was in your sent to you that has the majority of the programs that are all ranked was done in 2017. The last exercise we did was when we narrowed them down to about half as many programs, but those programs were then never re-ranked, although they're all included in the other programs, so we could look at that if we need to.
Thank you, Lori. That was a great overview of this process. Solid waste obviously being a little bit more unique because solid waste management isn't a mandated practice in county government. However, now that we have a landfill and we practice solid waste, now that comes with a vast majority of a bunch of legally required programs that we must do now to ensure that we maintain compliance with state and federal codes. So our scorecard is a little bit unique in that many things are mandated. Also, what's unique about it is that the cost recovery of each program is all 100% because we are an enterprise fund. So when looking through solid waste scorecard compared to some of the other departments, those things might pop out as being somewhat different, but those are the reasonings why. Happy to answer any questions that might come up.
And then I'll invite Diane Hanson, the business manager for Conservation Planning and Zoning, to add any additional thoughts as well.
Thank you, Lori. The only other comment I have is similar to what Jamie mentioned, is that we have kind of revamped our program areas from the original submittal back in 2019. So some of the rankings, some of our program areas are not even in the rankings because we've made some changes since 2020.
I guess I would just add, this is one of the pieces that I would like to update as best we can. I know that the data collection, even at the very beginning of this process, when we were really engaged with it, wasn't perfect back then. Mm-hmm. But I would still like to at least work towards something based in a similar manner like this, as far as what we would provide to finance, as far as like a work product for their budget discussions. So, I mean, I'm glad we have this, but it sounds like it could be updated to more accurately reflect where all the departments are in 2023. Because, like, Dave, on page, is it? I mean, it's 160 of the packet, but it's where you have the blurb. It's numbered 49, but I think it's 160 in the packet. So is that from 2018-19, or is that recently changed?
I believe that one was originally, that was added along with a long list of other information when we originally sent out the mandated versus discretionary programs with the big long list. I think it was about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
We had the big long list with rates and fees, and then there was a list of all the departments in the programs that were mandated and those that weren't. That's where that came from.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and it's still correct that you do not have anything on the county levy, correct? Yes. And you are still trying to work with getting some of that methane gas and whatever else you're trying to work with?
Supervisor Bend, yes, there is. We've not used levy dollars to date, being in an enterprise fund, but I know the conversation has come up in this committee that there may be potential opportunity for supporting the general fund through Marathon County Solid Waste. That's something that's I know been discussed, something that was in Administrator Leonard's work plan. So when looking at mandated versus discretionary programs, keeping in mind that if there was an opportunity to make changes, what does that look like in terms of that specific goal?
How many other counties bring things to the landfill?
We are contracted with a few other counties, Portage County and Shawano County. We have a tri-county intergovernmental agreement that was set up in 2003 that runs until 2032.
I guess another question I had is if we did an update like this and asked staff to basically take that list that was provided a couple months ago and try and use this as a template to try and rank those programs, is there also an opportunity for us to talk about some of those ideas we explored as far as the savings earlier in these discussions, as far as including the discussions we had about, and I'm not saying that we're recommending this, by the way, it's just items that we talked about, like a report to finance about things like automation, change in service delivery. So, like I said, I'm just trying to build towards like a work product, a report that we could give to finance at the end of this.
Yeah, I think we've talked internally that there's a couple recommendations that have come from this committee that you've given us direction to do as we move forward, including for example, doing an analysis to update our non-metallic fees, the increase in automation and technology, the directive to obviously continuously look for additional grant funding where possible. So we started to sort of keep track of those and believe those would be part of the recommendations that would get moved forward. I mean, I'll open it up to the other department heads as well. I don't know that we have any other background or definition information to guide us in redoing this exercise. So if we, most of these things might be pretty straightforward, but there could be things that are open to interpretation, and then I'm not sure where we are supposed to look for that interpretation. If we're not sure, like, is it truly a 3 or is it a 4, type thing. I don't know that we have everything we need to go through an exhaustive update of all of our programs.
Okay.
But I would look to other county staff for any input on that as well. So.
Well, and I understand.
No, I agree, Lori.
I was just going to say, thank you, Jamie. I was just going to say that I understand that the ask is a tough one given that there's a lack of the data and everything, but I really would like to do something as far as the ranking of these programs. Because the list is great, but as far as where the priorities lie within the departments, I think there's value in this group placing priorities on them as far as what needs to be the core function of that department. Not picking winners and losers, but just specifically saying that this is where we really need to focus our resources. So maybe it's not even a ranking. Maybe it's just us identifying, I don't know, I'm making up an arbitrary number here, but a handful of core functions that we know we need to prioritize as far as funding. So, again, because if the data wasn't great back then, I'm not going to force staff to just make up criteria on their own, because that's not going to give us good criteria to make decisions either. So, sure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the challenges I think that we have is if we're going to go down this road, we need to have some guidance for all departments, not necessarily just CPZ and try to, wing it, if you will, on bringing updates. Because if there's not consistency throughout the departments, then we're getting bits and pieces of information that may not, in its totality, be valuable in the big picture. So I think we need to have a deeper discussion at the board level and the amount of time and effort that it's going to take if we're going to utilize priority-based budgeting moving forward throughout the county. I'd like to have that discussion at the full board.
And I guess I get that, but I gotta stop using the word like. We're in August.
I'm not saying that it's going to be for this year.
And I remember way back in May, and I was the very first one with these discussions to talk about that. I felt like we were given unclear direction with this exercise. That's not necessarily directed at you, Chair. The process itself, I have some reservations with, and I'm trying to figure out beyond just the good discussions that we had, because I feel like we did produce value with those discussions as far as what are some recommendations that our staff has as far as becoming more efficient in the future. That's great. You know, I think those were worthwhile discussions. But as far as like, there I go again, finance or the larger board being given something, I don't know if they have much more direction beyond, hey, we're going to look into these opportunities into the future. Then we're just doing the same thing, but we just spent the last 5 months doing a lot of busy work. You know, I'm trying to basically here state that those discussions need to be codified into something, and that we also produce some sort of recommendation to that group, the HR Finance. Again, that's not directed at you, it's more the process itself. Marilyn?
Are you kind of looking at the Environmental Resources Committee mission statement, strategic plan goals? Is that something that you want from each one of the departments?
No, I'm talking about the specific programs that each of them do that are that were provided as part of that list several months ago. No, I'm not talking about doing planning here. I'm talking about the individual programs that our departments do.
Do you think we're doing the right programs? Do you think there should be different programs that the CPZ should be doing? Is that what you're looking for? Or so what's most important?
I'm looking for prioritization. That's what I'm looking for.
Which one is the most beneficial?
Essentially, yes. But here's the thing, and it's a fair point from Chair Gibbs. If the ERC leads in this matter, and we develop our own criteria to do these rankings, well, if the other standing committees aren't doing this, then what's the point of it?
If one committee does it, they all should do it.
Sure, but then it goes back to Chair Gibbs's earlier point. Maybe not necessarily Chair Gibbs's earlier point, but my frustrations earlier, which were in August. Okay, so we don't feel comfortable with the lack of data, with the lack of set criteria amongst all departments for making recommendations. What do we feel comfortable with?
I think we have already revisited the mandated versus non-mandated. I think every department feels pretty comfortable and like can take another look at that and make sure they're comfortable there. I know we have sort of revisited the cost recovery, and that's where those recommendations for us to take a look at a couple of, especially in CPZ, take a look at a couple areas and update those fees as it relates to cost recovery. I think we have a sense of where those lie. I think those are the two areas we feel okay in my department, but I think my understanding is there was some additional, what do you want to say, applications and guidance that were provided for many of these scoring criteria that would also assist us. The time and the fact that we don't have some of those tools, we may not be able to go through every element of the priority-based budgeting again, so.
Sure. So, and as far as park and forestry, I know we had discussions about user fees. We had discussions about the fairly limited opportunities that parks have for staffing specifically compared to the opportunities that our conservation department has for staffing. Even for solid waste, we talked about the relationship between that department and supporting not necessarily conservation planning and parks and forestry, but I think, Dave, you had discussions with Lance about the potential, for lack of a better word, royalty payments that would come from solid waste back to the county that would support certain functions within the county. So maybe my ask is, and committee members, of course, object to this if I'm way off base. Maybe the ask is that we make sure that mandated services document is as complete as possible, and we can codify the rest of those recommendations, those discussions about, and specifically with the user fees too, as far as where the department has been historically and where we want to currently be at. Maybe we produce all that, aggregate all that into a report, and we can provide that to the HR Finance and the full board as far as the work that we've done. I think that's very doable. I think we're not going off of sketchy data with doing something like that. Marilyn?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think this committee is already doing that. We say what, is mandated and what's not, what the user fees are and everything. I think we're getting good information that you can present to the county board. This is what our function is of this committee, what we're doing, what the user fees are. And I'll stop there before I say anything else in the other committees.
Well, no, that is 1,000% what I'm getting at here. But the thing is that we've had discussions for the past 5 months, not 5 months, 4 months, 4 months. Put it together, put it into something. Yeah, put it into a report, put it into whatever you want to call it, and just this. This is what we worked on.
I think
You can use this to make decisions when formulating the budget. County board members, HR finance, here you go. That's it.
I think they're real close to it right now, what they have. Because what we've gone through everything, I think this committee and CPZ is pretty much saying what they can present to the county board. This is what they're going to do, and this is how they're going to do it.
I think CPZ can summarize what we have covered in these meetings in the past few months, again, as it relates to some of the fee analysis and the mandated versus non-mandated and the directions and the recommendations that have come from this committee. I feel like we can summarize that into a memo, a report, something like that. I don't want to speak for solid waste or parks. So.
Do you have that ready for next month then?
I don't think it would be I think we could get something outlined, yeah.
Okay, because that's where HR
For
finance will
CPZ,
really...
but I'm not speaking for my other department.
Yeah. Well, I'd like that for all departments to be ready for next month, because I would like these discussions for at least in the short term be done. As far as this being a permanent agenda item, like I think we're done. HR finance and the rest of the board, they can do whatever they wish with that particular information document. We can revisit these discussions after this current budget cycle is done. We can go back. But as far as this being a process with the new budget process, like this needs to come to a final point here. It can't just keep lingering. So, all right. Staff, do you have direction?
I believe CPZ does. I'll look to the
Okay.
other department heads.
Dave?
Just to clarify, do we want to just update these scorecards? Obviously provide some narrative, provide some detail on summary on what was discussed over the last few months, but also provide these scorecards and update them?
So the scorecards, though, are related to this stuff. We're just asking for the programming.
Okay.
Like, just making sure that document that was provided a couple months ago is as clean as possible, as
Okay.
accurate as possible. So nothing with the scorecards for now.
All right.
But I'm hoping, based on Chair Gibbs's earlier comment, that maybe this is something we build on next year where we can actually implement those scorecards. Okay? Yeah, for everybody. Yep. Okay. Jamie, did you have anything?
No, I think I have direction too on just summarizing what we've all talked about. Nothing that I have is mandated, so I'll reiterate that and talk about, I guess, where we've been with that, our programs, and summarize our presentation that we gave about the items that we're working on to reduce levy support.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Moving on, I think we are down towards the end here. Okay, next meeting, September 5th, 2023, 3 p.m., Assembly Room, future agenda items. A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. And B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I have nothing. All right. Number 9, Supervisor Vensky.
I make a motion to end discussion.
All right, motion by Vensky. With a motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, motion to adjourn.
There we go. Okay, motion to adjourn by Vensky, second. Rodney Roskoff, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, members of the ERC. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it. I bet.